Now, as a pleasant diversion, may I please introduce myself?
Well, there was nobody quite like Peter Lorre. There's no doubt about that. He was the character actor of enormous subtlety.
Thank you. I knew I could trust you.
He was a terrific actor and a terrific character actor. And he was a man who knew how to hold a camera's eye, and that was tremendously compelling.
Excuse me, please. I must have expressed myself badly.
Peter Lorre was one of the greatest actors in cinema. I think we shouldn't underestimate his contribution to world cinema.
Your ability to inspire fear must be a powerful weapon.
One thing certain, there is, there was, there will be no one even remotely like him. He's a one-off.
It's nearly 7. I have some important business to attend to. See you some other time.
Peter Lorre was born Laszlo Lowenstein in Rozsahegyi, Austria-Hungary, on the 26th of June, 1904. They were a Jewish family. His mother died giving birth to her third son, and his father remarried her best friend. Young Peter Lorre did not get on with the stepmother.
He was brought up by quite a formidable father, Alawa. He'd come from a military background, was very proper and very fixed in his beliefs. And, you know, young sort of Laszlo Lowenstein, as he was till then, was not, you know, cut out to be a military type. And I think his father found that very difficult.
His father was in the Kaiser's army at one stage and was a military man who wasn't there very much, traveled quite a lot. So he was on his own most of the time, and it was a worrying time because it was just before the First World War and things were not settled.
In 1910, Peter Lorre's family moved to Romania, where Peter and his brother began their schooling. However, just 3 years later, war in the Balkans prompted Lorre's father to move the family again.
He was a very, very bright, gifted student, and they found themselves on the outskirts of Vienna during World War I, which wasn't the safest place for them to be, but they lived there and they survived.
Lorre was a gifted student and graduated top of his class. In 1921, he left home at just 17 years old to pursue his acting ambitions.
His father was a clerk in the drapery business and doing quite well. And the last thing he wanted was his son to have anything to do with the theatre.
He'd already developed some kind of inkling about the theatre, although because his father was very anti-theatre, he'd never actually been. He'd never actually seen any theatre. But what he did was he got a job as in a bank, an exchange bureau during the day. But at night, he joined a kind of avant-garde improvisational group who basically created theatre and put them on.
He works in foreign exchange, and he's running the place practically in a couple of months because he's so bright. But what he really wants to do is be in the theater.
He landed in Vienna at the right time because the pieces that they were putting together were kind of part psychotherapy, part drama, part whatever they could pull in, whatever was the zeitgeist. And in fact, he got to know Sigmund Freud reasonably well at the time.
So by night, he was doing improvised, sort of extraordinary improvised theatre. And then by day, he was exhausted in this kind of drudgery of a job as a bank clerk. And I think it got to the point where one day he didn't show up. He was so tired from his sort of theatrical pursuits that he missed a day of work and then got fired.
So without a paying job, deciding to become a full-time actor, of course, was a huge risk. And for a couple of years, he lived very frugally indeed. But he was determined to pursue his career.
He took a stage name at this point in time, and he became Peter Lorre. Also, unfortunately, at the same time, he had to have his appendix removed. He got ill, and he went into hospital. And we're talking about the 20s in Austria, and he was given morphine for the pain, obviously, and he got a liking to it, and that began troubles for him. But he carried on and carried on the theater.
There wasn't a huge amount of work going in the acting profession in Vienna, so he traveled around Europe. He went to Berlin, where, with some good luck, he encountered Bertolt Brecht.
Berlin in the 1920s is the Weimar Republic, and it's when, you know, every form of art was being explored in this sort of decadent, sort of fallen empire that existed there. And it was a wonderful place for the likes of Peter Lorre to arrive in. It was not surprising that he then fell in very much with that sort of avant-garde theatrical crowd of Berlin and the rise of Bertolt Brecht, and he got to know Brecht very well.
Lorre appeared in productions for Brecht on the German stage, and the actor began to steadily gain recognition. In 1931, he was spotted by one of Germany's most famous film directors.
When he was in Berlin, he made another good connection with the film director Fritz Lang, who was invited to see him in rehearsals. As a result of that first encounter, Lang took a bit of a gamble, I have to say, and cast him as the child murderer in M, which was the making of everyone. It was certainly the making of Lorre. It was actually his fourth film. He had made some before, but M was the one that put him on the international map.
He's cast by Fritz Lang in one of the most controversial movies ever made and one of the greatest movies ever made, and that's M.
Now, M is an enormously significant film and a wonderful piece of sort of German expressionist cinema. It's one of the first sound movies, and within it, it portrays, very loosely based on a real story, a child killer who's loose in Düsseldorf. And the idea of the film is that we would follow the exploits of the killer, and we would also follow the exploits of the fact that the underground, the mob, the criminal world will almost team up with the police to track down and hunt this vile killer of children. But because Lang was a highly intuitive and penetrating director, and because he saw in Peter Lorre that idea of exploring a character, no matter how obscene or abhorrent they might be, that it was a perfect sort of meeting of minds to create in M, the character, this kind of hideous killer that you feel sorry for. And it's an extraordinary piece of acting, full of these pained expressions that sort of defined the Peter Lorre character in many ways right from the beginning of his career. Decided that he could draw out in us a sympathy for the devil.
Immer muss ich durch Straßen gehen und immer spüre ich, ist einer hinter mir her. Es bin ich selber und verfolgt mich.
It was an extraordinary film and it had an extraordinary impact. It won the top best foreign film on the American Board of Review.
Peter Lorre continued to act in German film productions. However, political tensions in the country were rising.
By 1933, and the emergence of Hitler and the Nazi movement, it was kind of like an expunging of that kind of vibrant, kind of intellectual universe that had been the Weimar Republic and Berlin. But Goebbels, certainly at that point, 1933, was still a huge film fan and knew of Lorre and liked his work. Enough that Goebbels said, get out of Berlin, flee. Whether Goebbels would have been quite so compassionate, shall we say, later on in his career with Hitler, I don't know. But at that point, he was the one who warned Peter Lorre.
He decides to go, or I should say, flee to Paris. And Alfred Hitchcock invites him to London. And in 1934, Hitchcock cast him in The Man Who Knew Too Much.
I hope you weren't very rough with him. You see, he's subject to apoplexy.
Who?
Who? Poor old George Barber down at Wapping.
Is it all right in here? Thank you.
I ought to have mentioned it to you, perhaps. You should learn to control your fatherly feelings and not drop things on the floor, please.
Hitchcock liked the look of him. In fact, he was originally cast as the assassin in the film, which was a very small role, but he decided to give him another role, which was the crime ringleader, just because he wanted as much of his presence on the screen as he could. It's actually not a huge role, but Hitch, like many other directors after him, saw that a little of Lorre went a very, very long way.
He didn't know English, though he could speak, obviously, German and several other languages. He didn't know English at the time he made The Man Who Knew Too Much. So when in meeting Hitchcock to begin with, there's the story that he had to kind of decipher what the sort of brilliant storytelling Hitch was saying and work out exactly when the laugh was appropriate. And I think he obviously was clever enough to get it right because Hitchcock loved him and would frequently tell him stories. But he would learn the lines phonetically. And also, I think that adds something to the delivery. There's something sort of precise and deliberate and sort of mathematical about how the lines are sort of relayed, as if he's sort of searching out their meaning as he says them.
You know, to a man with a heart as soft as mine, there's nothing sweeter than a touching scene.
Such as?
Such as a father saying goodbye to his child. Yeah, goodbye for the last time. What could be more touching than that?
I'm afraid if you expect a scene from me, you're going to be disappointed.
We shall see.
This picture, The Man Who Knew Too Much, 1934, also won the top foreign film award in the National Board of Review.
In 1935, Peter Lorre relocated to California after the actor had received offers from Hollywood studios.
So with the success of his first Hitchcock thriller, he then comes to Hollywood and is signed up by Columbia, by Harry Cohn. And at the time, the ambitious Lorre came to Harry Cohn and said, "How do you feel about making an adaptation of Crime and Punishment, the Dostoevsky novel?" And Harry Cohn said, well, okay, he was kind of interested. He said, will you do me a favor, first of all? I'm going to rent you out to MGM to make this film Mad Love. And Mad Love is probably everything that Peter Lorre didn't want to get typecast as doing.
That's his own composition, you know.
Very modern music.
We've been married a year, but he's been on tour and I've been busy with the theater. So you see, this is really going to be our honeymoon.
You know, I've come to depend on seeing you every night.
But I'm going to England.
But I must see you again. I must.
At the time of Mad Love, he was sharing a house with Billy Wilder, of all people, so that, you can imagine that must have been an absolute hoot.
In 1935, he makes his first American film, and it's called Mad Love, and he plays an obsessed surgeon, obsessed with a woman.
He's bald-headed in it. He plays a kind of mad surgeon. It's a kind of chip off the kind of universal horrors of the era. It's wildly melodramatic and over the top. And it's quite splendid. It's everything kind of Peter Lorre can do really well. Rasping, snivelling, conducting evil experiments, and being wildly over the top, while still being wonderfully compelling and charismatic.
I, a poor peasant, have conquered science. Why can't I conquer love? Don't you understand? You must be mine, not his. You are mine.
Liar! Hypocrite! You disgust me!
Mad Love was the film that really defined Lorre's relationship with Hollywood. He was the villain.
What use is that money to her? It could save 100 lives like yours and mine. It's plain arithmetic. You could use some of her money, couldn't you? What will you do if you don't find Doga? She ought to be stamped out.
You shouldn't say things like that.
black beetles squatting up there on her money box. It would be a service to humanity.
Crime would be a strange way of serving humanity.
Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky's novel, was a film that he'd always wanted to make and to play Raskolnikov. He eventually managed to do it, and was given a very low budget in which to do it. It wasn't a success. I think he made the mistake of having Joseph von Sternberg direct it because he didn't have the right feel for it. There's nothing wrong with Lorre's performance, but the film does not actually rise to the occasion. It's not as good as his performance.
For Lorre, it really was an attempt to show he was a leading man and a great actor. But I think it's true that Lorre, who was very headstrong and felt he knew what was what, would naturally clash with von Sternberg. And given both their backgrounds, you know, this kind of Germanic origins that they kind of have, they both probably have a good idea of what they want to do with Dostoevsky. I can imagine it's an argument about shadows and lights and all sorts of things. But yes, they definitely fell out.
I wonder how many poor devils have found an answer to their questions down there. If only the dead could ever come back.
They have.
It wasn't one of von Sternberg's great films, but it was certainly brilliantly made, and his performance of Raskolnikov was much admired. So he'd now appeared in German, British, and American films, and was getting known not only nationally, but internationally too.
Hitchcock again called on Peter Lorre to star in his mystery thriller Secret Agent.
Not so neat after all. Big struggle before he died. Me better, much better. See, struggle.
The man who owns business with the man who killed him.
Yes, sir. Listen here. Also, he's the man we are looking for to find.
You're right, that's the motive. One way of stopping a fellow's mouth.
Say, look out, someone's coming.
He returns to London to rejoin with Hitchcock. Hitchcock really liked him and liked what he could do for his films. And The Secret Agent is based on a Somerset Maugham novel, and actually is one of the weaker of sort of Hitchcock's sort of British thrillers of the time. But it does have that great bit of casting that is Peter Lorre, and it does sort of show what Peter Lorre brought to roles. And he's kind of an unnamed assassin called the General.
Again, it's a sort of role that he could easily do and was, to a certain extent, typecast in. I think he was very aware of this, but he still brings an enormous amount of sort of charisma to it, bizarre charisma to it, which is exactly what takes the film into a slightly different dimension.
Peter, at this point, was buying things for himself, vehicles, you call it. So he bought the rights from Somerset Maugham. He then sold the rights to Hitchcock. The picture was made, and again won top foreign picture in the National Board of Film Review.
Where's my regular steward?
Haven't you heard? Carson's disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes, sir. Didn't sleep in his bunk last night.
Oh, so? That is too bad. An accident, perhaps?
Well, that's what the skipper thinks, but I got my own idea.
Yes?
Carson probably jumped overboard. He was a bit cracked, sir.
And I hadn't tipped him yet. That is very sad. Here, you might as well have it.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
He moves on to 20th Century Fox, the big mogul Daryl Zanuck, who asks him to play a Japanese detective called Mr. Moto.
Mr. Moto was a Japanese detective. He didn't have much makeup on. He just slicked his hair back and put on glasses. And Mr. Moto followed criminals all around the world and was the first of a series of films. In America, were extremely popular and made him virtually a household name.
The reason he decided to do these films was he'd just come out of rehab for his morphine addiction, and he really needed to work.
What is that you wrote, Mr. Moto?
Oh, this? An ancient Japanese poem called Hag. Must be exactly 17 syllables. Very difficult. Furui kei ni kawazu, tobikomu mizu no oto. Very nice sentiment. You won't mind if I desert you for a short time?
No, no, indeed.
Perhaps you might persuade Miss Liu to dance. Shall we go, Mr. Marlowe?
So they were sort of splendid matinee films, but typical of Lorre's desire to always be proving himself and moving on, he tired of them. Although they were big hits and they were kind of the making of him within Hollywood, he would get bored by the idea of it, and he would get dragged back in to make the next Mr. Motto film. And I think he by the last 2 or 3, and he made, I think, 8 of them, he admitted that he'd had enough and he wanted something else, and it wasn't a character he appreciated playing.
These were your boys. They are mine now. We still all can work together. We all can be friends if you want to play friendly. It's up to you. I'll cut you in starting with this deal. And Jeff, I think that's being very generous. Well, what do you see?
The face behind the mask is interesting because this is around the time within Hollywood, the germs or the seeds of film noir were starting to emerge, with the sort of immigrants coming over, and the kind of shadows were building within the film community. It wasn't sort of fully flourished film noir yet. Lorre was a great tool for that kind of style. It's the story of an immigrant. It's also sort of a burn-scarred character played by Lorre. He really suffered with the prosthetics and didn't enjoy that side of it at all. But I think what's more interesting with that and some of the films he began to make for Warner Brothers at this time was that he sort of was an emergent and important figure in what would become film noir.
It's a very, very interesting and very frightening performance.
See, Mr. Spade, I'm trying to recover ornament that, shall we say, has been mislaid.
Uh-huh.
I thought and hoped you could assist me. The ornament is a statuette. Black figure of a bird. I am prepared to pay on behalf of the figure's rightful owner the sum of $5,000 for its recovery. I am prepared to promise that, what is the phrase? No questions will be asked.
The serendipity would bless Lorre with some of his greatest relationships when the young John Huston went to Warner and said, the time is right for another version of the Maltese Falcon. I think he'd got a sense of sort of the changing tone in films, that while a war was going on in the world, people didn't want sort of fluffy escapism. They were kind of getting interested in darker themes and exploring darker moods. And I think Huston felt this was a great time to do another version of Maltese Falcon. There'd been 2 previously.
Joel Cairo is an extraordinary creature, a role for which he should forever be remembered. I think that John Huston, when he said that Peter Lorre was one of the finest and most subtle actors with whom he'd ever worked, knew something. He got it right.
Then where is it?
Where Floyd hid it.
Floyd said. And you know where he hid it? Then why do we have to wait a week?
Oh, perhaps not a whole week.
And why, if I may ask another question, are you willing to sell it to me?
Because I'm afraid. After what happened to Floyd, I'm afraid to touch it except to turn it over to somebody else.
What exactly did happen to Floyd?
Huston's brilliance was to take the Dashiell Hammett novel and to cast the extraordinary Humphrey Bogart as Sam Spade, Private Eye, and to team up Peter Lorre with Sidney Greenstreet, who was this kind of great character actor. And there were these fantastic sort of textures within this brilliant sort of early noir detective thriller about everyone trying to hunt for the Maltese Falcon.
In fact, it was the first of 8 films he made with Sidney Greenstreet, and several with Humphrey Bogart, too. And Huston was much admiring of his performance.
Give them Cairo. Well, by God, sir.
And suppose we give them you, Miss O'Shaughnessy. How about that, huh?
You want the Falcon, I've got it. The Fall Guy's part of the price, I'm asking. As for Miss O'Shaughnessy, if you think she can be rigged for the part, I'm perfectly willing to discuss it with you.
You seem to forget that you are not in a position at all to insist upon anything.
Now, come, gentlemen, let's keep our discussion on a friendly basis.
It was an unbelievable hit. People were just shocked at this picture. It is a classic. It still stands up.
What follows, I think, from Maltese Falcon is a very healthy period in Peter Lorre's career, a very productive one, that he signs up with Warner Brothers, and now they're very eager to make the kind of thrillers in which Peter Lorre would thrive.
In 1942, he then joined the extraordinary ensemble cast of one of the most beloved films of all time, Casablanca.
You know, Rick, watching you just now with the Deutsche Bank, one would think you've been doing this all your life.
Well, what makes you think I haven't?
Oh, nothing. But when you first came to Casablanca, I thought...
You thought what?
What right do I have to think?
When Warner Brothers came to put Casablanca together, I think they imagined it no more than just a kind of second-tier studio film to sort of keep the kind of schedules full. But something, you know, some magic happened in its making, turned an ordinary film into a miracle of a film. As everyone knows, it's all set in the town of Casablanca, where Rick, the character played by Humphrey Bogart, runs this cafe, Rick's Cafe, which is a kind of a meeting point of these disparate souls who are, you know, exiled or on the run or hiding out. You know, they're kind of the detritus of the war. They're kind of washed up in this bar.
He plays Ugarte, the sort of villainous, slippery guy who's got the visas, the Nazi visas that will get people out. It's a small but it's a telling role. He makes his mark, he comes in, he does his stuff. You can tell the guy's a rogue, but at the same time, he's got these sort of visas that will actually help refugees escape.
Oh, you object to the kind of business I do, huh? But think of all those poor refugees who must rot in this place if I didn't help them. Well, that's not so bad. Through ways of my own, I provide them with exit visas.
For a price, Ugarte. For a price.
But think of all the poor devils who can't meet our nose price. Oh, I get it for them for half. Is that so parasitic?
I don't mind a parasite. I object to a cut-rate one.
He was part of a marvelous cast, including Humphrey Bogart, of course, Ingrid Bergman, and the smaller parts were all played by faces who would be known by filmgoers in America and Europe. Although he had a small role, it was noticed. And indeed, however small his role was, or however big it was, it seemed like he could do no wrong with the critics. I don't think they gave him one bad notice so far in his whole career.
Well, speak up, Grandpere. It's your canoe.
That's right. If it wasn't for Grandpere, none of us would be going.
And who did he speak to first? Not to you. You weren't even there.
What's that got to do with it? I'm smaller than any of you. Even Garou weighs a good 10 pounds more than I do.
You weigh enough to lighten the canoe all that's needed.
Yeah, and who got the word to Mattrack?
Shut up, the bunch of you. You... Well, Grandpere?
Off the back of now the Maltese Falcon and Casablanca, I think Warner Brothers felt they had a winning formula. This was almost like a company of actors and artists who they could move around and sort of almost just do similarly themed films. Passage to Marseille really is an echo of the Casablanca formula.
In 1944, he's reunited with Humphrey Bogart in Passage to Marseille. Not as big a picture in any way as Maltese Falcon or Casablanca, but that was their partnership, and people came to the cinema to see those two on the screen again.
Well, you forgive me, Mr. Peters, but I don't understand what you're talking about. Not that it makes any difference whether I do or not, but... Oh, I think I'm tired. Yeah, I'm very tired. I want to go to bed. 1 million, huh? No, Mr. Peters. Well, I suppose there's no reason why I shouldn't tell you what my interest in Demetrius is. Well, it certainly isn't money. I make a decent living. As you know, detective stories sell very well. Detective stories.
In 1944, he makes a film called The Mask of Demetrius, which has really gained a lot of respect as the years go by.
It's a Lorre film in which he plays a writer who happens upon, through various contexts, researching a novel, happens with this dead body of a character called Demetrios, and becomes fascinated by how he ended up, in the Bosporus. And it's another one of those kind of sort of stories in which he follows a path through a Europe that's ambiguous and full of kind of amoral characters.
This is a film that didn't do very well. Critics didn't like it, and it did okay in the box office. I have to say it's one of my favourites, if only because Lorre himself is not playing a villain, he plays a novelist. He is wonderful in it.
When I was in Istanbul, I heard some very interesting things about the end of those smugglers. Somebody there said that Demetrius betrayed all of you. He sent a dossier to the police, I think, anonymously. Is that true?
Demetrius behaved very badly to us all.
And it's a really nice, actually, it's a great novel, but it's also a nice sort of bit of chance for Peter Lorre to be a slightly more complicated lead character again.
You know, Doctor, I've completely lost track of Mr. Spinalzo.
Wait, who's this Mr. Spinalzo?
A friend of ours Johnny was looking for.
Don't you bring anyone else in here. Now, come on, beat it, both of you.
It's all right, Johnny. While we are packing, I'll tell you about him.
Arsenic and Old Lace, which of course is based on the famous Castle Ring play, is it's that wonderful sort of black comedy involving murderous aunts and wonders on the British stage. And I think for Peter Lorre, it offered a chance for once to show that he could be very comic. He's the kind of plastic surgeon who's completely demented, called Dr. Einstein. But he really sort of gets the spirit of the piece.
Tell me, don't those plays you see all the time teach you anything?
Oh, stop it. Don't get me on the subject of plays. I've got a lot on my mind now. I've got to wait here for Mr. Witherspoon.
At least people in plays act like they got sense.
Oh, you think so? Did you ever see anybody in a play act like they got intelligence?
How
Did
can
you?
somebody be
Well, I had
so
my job for a
stupid?
few nights. Listen to me, brother. When you
A
get
change of tone for him. Peter Lorre himself, in quite a major role in the film, was certainly praised once again above most others.
He actually acts Cary Grant off the screen, which is not an easy thing to do by anybody's definition. You remember Peter Lorre. You don't remember Cary Grant that much, but Peter Lorre, you remember in this one.
Please don't. If you go, what will happen to my work?
What is my going away to do with your work?
Don't you see, Julie, since you began looking after him, he's forgotten about me. I've had time for my studies.
But if I go, he'll have another nurse to look after him.
No, if you leave, he won't let me out of his side. I need every minute of the day for my work. I have to stay right here in his library, and his books on his shelves are the great secrets I'm after.
The Beast with Five Fingers was his last film with Warner Brothers. It's a story of this sort of Italian recluse who hides himself away and studies these kind of weird occult books, and all the kind of people who then come for the inheritance when he dies. And Peter Lorre is this old friend of his who is desperate to get his hands on this kind of occult library, and so works his way in. And of course, the hand of this character, who's a pianist, has stayed alive by the mysterious machinations of the plot. So most of the film requires poor Peter Lorre to kind of play it straight opposite sort of a hand dashing about and being ludicrous. And the puppetry actually is fairly impressive.
The only reason to see this film is to see Peter Lorre and to watch his reactions whenever he encounters the hand in question. There is an incredibly long scene where he's alone in a room and the thing starts sort of crawling around. To watch his reactions, there is absolutely no dialogue whatsoever, is to see a masterclass in reaction.
In 1948, Peter Lorre was subpoenaed to appear before the House of Un-American Activities Committee.
Lorre had to sort of drop below the radar for a while after the House of Un-American Activities came a call-in. He did, in fact, issue some names.
He came out of it and he classified himself as being grey-listed for about sort of 10 years within Hollywood. And he would flee back toward Germany.
He moved out of the country and he made what was in fact his only film as a director, called The Lost One, which actually is a very fine film indeed. The only problem with it is that it addresses German guilt over World War II, and it was rather too soon after the war, so I'm afraid it failed.
So at this point, coming out of The Lost One, he was virtually destitute. He had no money. and didn't know which way to turn. And the person to save him, or to come to his rescue, was John Huston again. And he said, well, come back, I'm making this film called Beat the Devil, and I think I've got a part for you. And really, he saved Lorre's career at that point.
Billy, good morning.
What's our wide-eyed Irish leprechaun doing outside my door?
Why do you always make jokes about my name, huh? In Chile, the name of O'Hara is a tip-top name. Many Germans in Chile have become to be called O'Hara.
Good morning, Mr. O'Hara.
Madame, my respects.
Perhaps Mr. O'Hara would like something to drink?
Yes, maybe perhaps a little whiskey, huh? Very weak, please.
1953 comes Beat the Devil with Humphrey Bogart and a rising star called Gina Lollobrigida. Peter has a part as a former Chilean Nazi, and they're all going to Africa. It's John Huston's kind of, I guess we would call larky picture, in the sense that this is his gang, Bogart and Lorre. And it's funny. It's a funny picture. And it's grown in stature because you start to see the sort of wittiness and irony of the relationship that Peter Lorre had with Humphrey Bogart, a very difficult guy, but they found the humor with each other.
You lost. Huh? You lost a fortune.
Oh, I still have 23.
But now he can afford to lose.
I may win. Sir, the bank is broke. Continue. Just a moment.
He returned to Hollywood with the John Huston film and saw that to make money, I think television was a good opportunity. But he has the honor in screen history of being the first man to play a Bond villain. This is a version of Casino Royale, the first Fleming Bond book, done for television, with Barry Nelson playing Jimmy Bond, as he liked to call him. So it's a bit of it's a novelty more than anything. It's not very good. But what is interesting is that Le Chiffre is very well played by Lorre, and he's very well cast. He's a good Bond villain. He's exactly what you kind of want.
Peter Lorre is wonderful. He's sinister as everything you think, and has never ever said that he was the first Bond villain, but he was.
Fine way to go hunting. I knew there'd be a catch to this.
Seems you can't do anything on this boat without getting wet.
Hey, I feel like I'm keeping a fish out of work. Hey, wait a minute, where are you going with this?
Back in Hollywood, Peter Lorre has made his peace with the fact that from now on, he will sensibly cast as versions of Peter Lorre in films and endeavour to play Peter Lorre to the best of Peter Lorre's ability. And amongst them were some classic sort of movies of the time. And there's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which of course is the great Disney adaptation of Jules Verne's wonderful novel.
This is about a boat, a submarine, basically. It is exploring everything. And it's got all the monsters, all the stuff that we take for granted now, all of these different characters. And he plays someone called Conseil. And it's a James Mason picture with Kirk Douglas singing and dancing in, if you can believe it, and Peter Lorre as this scientist, this wise man. It was basically a picture about special effects, what we would call special effects. And it's also a picture about color.
Captain, I wondered, as long as the professor is not going ashore, if I could go in his place. I'd like to collect some specimens and take some notes.
You feel qualified?
Qualified? Why, for years the professor and I have been working together.
And I can row, sir. Got a strong back. And a strong desire to escape. Who, me? I'm no deserter. Happy to be aboard, sir.
But it still stands up. It's quite an amazing picture. Quite an amazing picture that all of them were in it.
Honorable gentlemen, feeling better this morning?
What are you doing here?
Why is the hotel moving this way? What? Steamship, not hotel. You're on board of steamship Canary.
Canary?
Yes, we go Shanghai, then we go Yokohama.
He's still being cast now, but in their sort of big cameo roles. He gets another role in Around the World in 80 Days. And again, we know whenever he's on the screen, you can't take your eyes off him.
The film won the Academy Award for Best Picture, so it was a great success for Peter Lorre because it was an all-star cast. But once again, he only had a small role, but it was noticed critically.
Peter Lorre appeared in a cast that included Vincent Price in the horror parody Tales of Terror.
Unless you are intent on mere rabble-rousing, you have just made a most grave and serious accusation.
An accusation which I'm prepared to follow up with action. That is, if you care to take the risk.
We will take the risk.
Oh?
He then went into a whole series of Roger Corman films. In the early days, Roger Corman would make a film in about a fortnight using young people who had not been used before to make a feature.
Although his glory years were probably behind him by now, Peter Lorre, he sort of adapted well to the changing times in certain respects. And he also became very useful to Roger Corman's sort of American International Pictures, his sort of early version of B-movie filmmaking, where he wanted to pluck sort of has-been eccentric actors who had a certain cachet and put them into sort of very melodramatic, semi-comic horror movies and make hay out of this formula. And it really worked.
I know you. You're afraid to face me when I'm sober, huh?
Are you sober?
Sober enough to make a fool of you, you cheap faker, you.
Father.
Dr. Bedlow.
That I did not hear. We will proceed with our present conversation.
Yes, you are afraid, you miserable coward.
Father, in the name of...
Shut your mouth!
His last big hit was The Raven, which was another Roger Corman film in which he played a magician who'd been turned into a raven. He was playing opposite Vincent Price and very young Jack Nicholson, and it was a typical Corman production. And lo and behold, it was a huge hit. Everybody loved it. I mean, it was one of the great drive-in movies of the time.
Well, if you would call a stage about to run over you, yeah, it was a frightened stage scared.
Also amnesia, shock, and frostbite.
I could have had that too, the way I felt.
Look, Chick, the kid is gonna be all right. We just found out something in time, that's all.
Yeah, that we got the wrong guy.
No, we just have to work harder, that's all.
His last film was The Patsy, made by Jerry Lewis. He regarded it very unfavorably. He didn't like the story, he didn't like his part, and he didn't get on very well with Jerry Lewis either. But though the film was not a success, either with the critics or at the box office, latterly it's been upgraded as one of the funny comedies of the period.
Just 4 days after filming ended on The Patsy, Peter Lorre passed away. He was 59 years old.
I hope you're more impressed with me now.
Peter Lorre's legacy, I think, is almost appropriately enough a split one, a split personality. He is one of the great sort of intellectual actors and one of the great explorers of psychology of parts. And then the other half of him is what Hollywood made of that, for good and bad. The glorious sort of second-tier character, performer, who played these eccentrics and Europeans and immigrants and villains and distrustworthy characters, which he excelled at.
You see, Mr. Spade, if you know more than I do, then I shall profit by your knowledge. So will you.
When he had a chance, he was able to give really good performances in practically any kind of part. He very rarely gave a bad performance.
He is immortal in Casablanca. He's immortal in The Maltese Falcon. These films will never die, so therefore Peter Lorre will never die.
You know, Rick, I have many a friend in Casablanca, but somehow, just because you despise me, you are the only one I trust.
Peter Lorre's legacy is of a unique actor, an indelible imprint on each film he made. He had the most extraordinary delivery of his voice. It was easy to imitate, I mean, and he had the most extraordinary look. He didn't look like anybody else on the screen. It means that he has sort of made his mark on cinema history.
Well, bon voyage.